Hi, everybody. I think most of you know I'm Ann Copeland. I'm the founder of the Interchange Institute, and welcome to the Culture Chat. If you have new first-time people here, we especially welcome you. Part of the joy of this forum is that people can come drop in as they can, and we always welcome new voices and new faces. And we're very happy today to have a special guest speaker we'll introduce in just a minute. Let's see, it just occurs to me, is Nick here?
He is.
Okay, good.
Hey, Nick is here. Good morning,
Okay,
everybody.
Good. I just realized I didn't.
Or afternoon. Good evening.
I'm going to turn the mic over to you in a second, Nick.
Ma'am.
But first, I just want to, as we usually do, go through a few upcoming events at the Interchange Institute. As you know, we offer an ongoing series of Train the Trainer workshops called Crossing Cultures with Confidence. The dates are here, and you will be getting these as well in follow-up emails from Tasha Arnold. We have a couple of other webinars. Promoting yourself as an intercultural trainer is very, very popular and an important and very useful way to learn about social media and other ways to promote yourself. And another on It's Not What You Say, It's How You Say It, from our own Vanessa Paisley. So you can always check our website as well for upcoming events. As is our custom, we will continue to meet every 2 weeks. For the Culture Chat at this same time, July 13th and 27th, but note that we'll take the month of August off and resume again in September. One point of information, those of you who came to the Culture Chat last time when we were talking about, Renata was talking to us about speaking and listening with agility. We invite you again to make the recording that she described and to submit that to Tasha, and you'll get a reminder about that from Tasha in the follow-up email. The archive of accents that we're trying to collect will be most useful if it's very large. And so if we have people from all over speaking English, in whatever accent is yours, that's what we want. So please take a note and look for that. The Intercultural Training Expertise Certification has really taken off. We're very happy to have provided this to the intercultural community. It's a way of tracking your own expertise and where you stand in terms of preparation and expertise, and also to signal that to the world, to buyers and purchasers of services. It's also a handy way for those purchasers to understand that a nonprofit like the Interchange Institute has reviewed somebody's expertise. So the next submission deadline is August 1st. We have a bunch of opportunities for you to learn more about it. And if you have real practical questions about submitting the application, these dates are available. And again, we'll be emailing this to you, but we encourage you to do that. Finally, just a reminder and an invitation to join us at the Interculturalist Circle. It's a group, it's a way that you can continue these lovely conversations that we have at the Culture Chat, learn from each other informally and through collaboration. And so we encourage you to do that. Terry, do you want to say something about your get together in Detroit, in Troy?
Yes, we're having a get together with anyone who's from Culture Chat or CCWC alumni associated with the Interchange Institute. I will be in town right in the neighborhood. We're having our Crossing Cultures with Confidence workshop that day. And so I will be bringing new cohorts, which will be wonderful for them to get to network with some friendly faces. So if you're in Michigan and in the area, come join us. And you can email me and let me know you're coming. I'll be on the lookout for you. We'll set aside a spot in the restaurant.
Okay, thanks. And finally, I would like to turn the mic over to Nick Dung, who's going to introduce our presenter for today.
All right. Well, I was out there recruiting even just yesterday for people to come to Culture Chat, not least for the whole group, but maybe just a little for our leader today, Michael Gates. We are legitimately excited about this. Michael Gates is an associate fellow of Said Business School and owner of Michael Gates Cross Culture. He's an internationally recognized teacher and writer on cross-cultural management. He speaks regularly at large corporate and government events and also at Culture Chat. At Said Business School, Michael is a regular contributor to the Oxford program on negotiation. He has also taught on many custom programs for organizations including China Construction Bank, Equinor, the European Patent Office, and Bank of China. He has provided cross-cultural training in more than 40, that's 40 countries, that's corporations and organizations such as Nokia, World Bank, Microsoft, Rolls-Royce, the UN, King, ByteDance, the people who brought you TikTok, the EU and the Finnish and Swedish governments as part of their preparations for the EU presidency. Michael was previously with Richard Lewis Communications from 1990, first as managing director of the Finnish company, and subsequently as the Nordic Regional Director. He was appointed Group Managing Director in 2000, Vice Chairman in 2012. In 1997, Michael came up with and implemented a concept for the world's first online cross-cultural assessment and cultural data resource, Culture Active. He currently has a database of over 100,000 users. He has been published in dozens of newspapers and magazines on cross-cultural matters. Michael has also contributed chapters to books published in the United Kingdom, Finland, Denmark, and India. Michael has an MA in English Language and Literature from St. Catherine's College, Oxford. Thank you, Michael, and we appreciate the knowledge you will share with us today.
Thanks
Welcome.
very much, Nick. Thanks also to Anne and Terry for the introductions there. And the topic is perceptions in multicultural teams. It's a subject which I find extremely interesting because when we're assessing people on the programs that I run, they do a self-assessment. And I started wondering, well, what would happen if we got people to assess their colleagues anonymously so you can compare how you saw yourself to the group results? And there are quite often some large gaps. And those gaps, I think, are very interesting for cross-culturalists because what do they mean? Why do they happen? So that's the thing that I'd like you to reflect on. And a multicultural team, any team really, is very complicated. I just want to begin with this. I'm not going to go through this in detail. And it was something which someone posted on LinkedIn just a few days ago. And it was looking sort of mathematically at different communication lines within teams. And it's quite extraordinary how complex it starts to become, even when you get to 5 or 6 people in a team. And then, 14 is obviously a big team, but it's incredibly complex, which obviously means that there's a lot of possibility for miscommunication the more complicated it gets. And what I'm going to do to introduce things is, first of all, introduce you to the model of culture which is behind the program. And then we're going to have a little look at a 360. It's a real one, but we've changed the names. What I call a 360 assessment, where you assess your colleagues, to give you a sort of idea about it. And then it would be fantastic if you can talk about it. And I've got a couple of questions for you to think about. So some of you are probably familiar with the model. Those of you who aren't, it's one model among many. It's quite a simple one. It's based very much on communication. And we've divided cultures or classified them into 3 types, which we apply not only to national culture, but particularly when you're doing a 360 to personal culture or professional culture. So in the left-hand corner, we've got what we call rather linear people, cool, factual, decisive planners. At the top, we have multi-actives in the red area, warm, emotional, talkative, and impulsive. Then over in the yellow corner, we've got cultures that listen a lot, that are very polite, amiable, and are good at making compromises. They tend not to initiate. And some people, some cultures are somewhere in the middle. Now, of course, as I mentioned, you can apply this not just to national culture, because I don't want people to get stuck on national culture. You can apply it to professions. So wherever people are from in the world, if they're engineers or accountants, it's quite likely that they might be in this blue linear corner. And then up at the top, well, in commercial organizations, it's very often people in sales and marketing. Over here in the reactive corner, I think coaches quite often come into this area because they've got to listen, haven't they? And I would hope that psychotherapists would be there. I would hope doctors would be, particularly surgeons, would be quite linear. You know, you don't want your surgeon saying, "No, where did I put that thing?" Multitasking. And we found in our research that HR people often come out right in the middle, which is quite interesting. I ran a session some years ago at the World Bank, and they had about 70 or 80 people in HR. And when we assessed them, people come out as a dot on this triangle, which you'll see shortly, and they were very much clustered in the middle. Interestingly, we found that leaders, wherever they're from in the world, and we've assessed over 100,000 people, about 10,000 of those were very senior leaders, CEOs. They very often come out as multi-active, and I'm not saying that's good or bad. If you think about politicians, multi-actives in many countries are good at talking themselves to the top. They're good at engaging people emotionally. They're good at elections. But when they get there, I'm sure we can think of examples of leaders who talked a good talk, got to the top, and then were very disorganized and emotional and making decisions through gut feeling, which any of you have read Daniel Kahneman would know is not necessarily the best way to make decisions. If we look at it on a table, I'm not going to go through this in detail. Hopefully you get these slides afterwards. These are some of the characteristics of the three types. If we apply it to communication, particularly to communication in a team, the linears are the people who are trying to give and receive information. That's one of the main functions of their communication. Whereas multi-actives, well, information is important, but they're more interested in maybe what you feel about things and about building relationships. And reactives, a lot of their communication is listening, but when they do actually speak, then it's very much about creating a sense of harmony. And China, Japan, Vietnam, Thailand, harmony is a key, originally Confucian virtue. In our research, we've put countries around the triangle in this way, based on the assessments, the individual assessments. We've simplified it. I mean, think of it like a map of the London Underground rather than, or the subway, rather than a totally accurate map. So we've simplified it to 2 dimensions. Because if you've got dots all over the triangle, then it's not going to make that much sense for practical purposes. The thing about this triangle is that culture is always relative. And so one could draw shorter or smaller triangles here. So for example, if you look at the Nordic area, if I drew a triangle with Denmark at the top and Finland on the bottom right, you could say, well, Danes are a little bit like the Italians of the Nordic area, and Finns are like the Japanese of the Nordic area. So it is relative. When I am working with a big group live, then I'd put them through an assessment to find out, are they more linear, multi, or reactive? And then we give them an exercise for an hour or so in separate rooms, and then they come back and make a presentation. And some people who are somewhere in the middle, we make them observers, and they go around and report back and say, well, in room 1, people were preparing a very detailed PowerPoint. In room 2, people had made paper hats and were holding hands and going around in a circle singing a song. So why did they behave differently? And I've got some photos of groups working, and you let me know if you think they're linear, multi, or reactive. So what do you think they are, linear, multi, or reactive? Just put your mic on, because I'm not sure I can get the chat. Anyone?
Linear.
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 They're very process driven, quite serious. Some people say, well, they don't look very happy. I say, well, they might look happy, but they're not expressing it in a way that a multi-active would. They're making a list, wearing glasses. They've looked at too many Excel sheets, very process driven. The next group, given exactly the same instructions and think fairly clearly multi-active. is very noisy, very lively, chaotic, but extremely creative. And usually I swap a few people from one group to another partway through, and they can feel the difference in the new team. And then this final one, they're reactive, and they are listening. Two of them are clearly Asian. We didn't put them in the team because of that, but because they scored high on reactivity in the assessment. And it's very harmonious, and they take a lot of time to do. So that gives you a flavor. Now, when you come to a homogeneous versus diverse teams, some of you may be familiar with this diagram. It's some research which took place probably about 15, 20 years ago now, but it's human behavior, so there's huge change. And the vertical axis is number of teams, and the horizontal one is performance from bad to good. And these are new teams who've been put together. Some of them are homogeneous, some of them are diverse, given a fairly complex task to do over a day or so. And then the results are measured. And what's interesting is that many of the diverse teams didn't do very well. Homogeneous teams had quite a wide bell curve of performance, but then the very best teams of the lot were also diverse. So the question is why? Well, it says managed poorly, managed well, but what does that management consist of? What are the characteristics of the teams? And what the researchers then did was to focus on the diverse teams which performed well, and they called them creator teams, and they tried to find out what the success factors were. Well, the first thing that they noticed was that they were very good at mapping. So they had a clear idea of who they were individually, who they were as a team, what the other members of the team were like. This is why I came up with the idea of the 360, because part of mapping is not just seeing what everyone thinks about themselves, but what other people think about their colleagues in the team, and what are those perceptions. And then very good at bridging. So now that we know how we're different and how we perceive each other, what are we going to do to improve things? And finally, how can we integrate different styles, and how can we make this diversity in a very real and concrete way an asset? So I'm going to now stop sharing and go on to Culture Active and show you an example of how this works in practice before we go on to the breakouts. So if I just share my screen again. So this is a real team. We've changed people's names. So you don't know who it is, but they were quite senior managers working in purchasing for a big consumer electronics company. And this guy here was the boss of the team, and he's French. And we had many different nationalities in the team. And everyone has done a self-assessment, and that is where he came out in his self-assessment. These other dots are not the other members of the team. They are the positions that other members of the team saw Thibault as being in, based on answering a shortened survey about Thibault. So you can see there's quite a big spread there. This is how he sees himself. This is how other people see it. Now, interestingly, he's the leader. And one thing that I've noticed, and this is one of the issues I'd quite like you to consider in the breakouts, is that quite often the leader is the one that there's the biggest range of opinions about. So if someone's quite junior in the team, the tendency is for other members of the team to see that person very closely to how they perceive themselves. But why, I wonder, is the leader often seen in many different ways by different team members? Don't answer that now, but think about it. And then we can click here. So for example, if I click on this person, we don't see who it is, but when they answered for Thibault and how would Thibault answer the questions, in my opinion, then this is where there was commonality. But then here, this is where there were gaps. So Thibault thinks I listen most of the time. But this team member thinks, well, Thibaut talks most of the time. And if we look at a summary of everything, we can look here and find that if we click listening and speaking, well, Thibaut, as we saw before, thinks I listen most of the time. Most of his team think that he talks most of the time. So what's very important then is in the debrief, and I always begin with the leader of the team, because the more they disclose, the more the rest of the team will disclose in general. At this point, I would say to Thibaut, well, this is quite an interesting result. Do you want to ask the team why they think this? And in this particular case, they said, well, when we're trying to talk with you, you're very often multitasking. So we could be trying to tell you something important and you're sending a text or answering a quick email. So we don't think you're listening. He said, well, I'm very good at multitasking. I can listen. Yes, but that's not the perception. So the next thing is to move on from that and do it with each person and then get some general observations on the team. To at the end, people say, well, these were the important things I learned. This is what I need to do to change. And then, of course, how do we get that change to happen? And again, that's one thing that I'd like you to consider. In this particular team, we had one young Polish lady who was the most junior member of the team, and she saw herself right in the reactive area. But the rest of the team, sorry, I got it the wrong way around. She saw herself in the multi-active area, but the rest of the team saw her down there. And I said to her, do you want to talk about that? You don't have to. She said, yes, I'd like to say something. She said, what the rest of the team don't know is that for the last 6 months, twice a week, I have to go to anger management classes. And really, I'm extremely emotional. And she actually started crying at that point. Well, what was really good was that the team saw her for who she really was and gave her support and said, look, if you really feel strongly about something, there's no need to bottle it up with us. Let it out. We don't mind you showing your emotions. And she found that extremely comforting in a way. I'll just show you one more thing here, and then we'll open the breakout rooms. This area is about values, and we've put them into certain categories. The reason there aren't circles all the way around here is that before doing a 360, we allow the team to vote on what they think are important values for the team. And so it then generates a questionnaire which is shorter. It's basically to save time, to make it shorter. Because if you've got a team of 12 people like you did there, it takes quite a bit of time to do the assessment on everyone. So the values questionnaire is shorter. I'm just going to pick two here and then we'll move on. Competitiveness. Now, this was quite interesting for the team because we're still on Thibaut. Thibaut is the black lozenge there. He came across as very strongly wanting to compete. Most of the team saw him as very cooperative. So at this point, the team said, oh, do we need to watch our backs then? You're competitive. He said, no, when I was answering, what I meant was that I'm competitive upwards in the organization on behalf of the team. So I'm competitive for the team. So it tends to sort out some of these issues which could have been causing misunderstandings and misperceptions. And then just one final one, mistakes. Now, in this case, people very much saw that Thibaut saw the value of mistakes like he did. One person was a little bit more of this side. That might have been some particular experience that they'd had individually. However, what I've noticed with many teams is that people come out individually saying, I see the value in mistakes. But then when we look at the 360, most other people think, well, that person sees mistakes as a sign of weakness. It can't be true. How could it be that most people say, I see the value of mistakes, but other people think she or he doesn't see the value in mistakes? I think it's got something to do with the way in which we convey mistakes to other people and communicate those mistakes. And people are generally more sensitive perhaps than we think or appreciate. So I'm going to stop there and go back to the main PowerPoint to give you your questions. And so we'll let you have about 20 minutes, I think, in the breakout rooms. Come up with as many reasons as you can as to why there may be gaps. They could be cultural, they could be psychological, between how people see themselves and how they're perceived by their colleagues, because there are these gaps, and I think these gaps are very important in team perception. If you have time, discuss how you as facilitators can help people close those gaps and build a better performing team. So fairly simple two questions to deal with. And I'd just like you to discuss those things. I don't know if it's possible to copy paste these into the chat or put them in the breakout rooms so people remember.
Let's see.
Yep, they're in the chat.
Oh, great, thanks.
Gotcha.
Nick.
You're in the chat, great, perfect.
Thanks.
Thanks very much, Nick.
Great.
Okay, so if we could form the breakout rooms now.
Yes. They're ready. They have 3 or 4. I think most of them have 4 people in them. One has 3. If you find that you're not assigned to a group, just stay put and I'll assign you to one. And we'll close the rooms in about 20 minutes. Here we go.
Thanks, Anne. Okay, well, I think everyone's back now.
Yes.
Now, because we've got 10 groups, I'm not going to have time to go through every group. So,
What?
Oh, people are disappearing.
What happened?
Oh,
Oh,
I messed up again.
oh,
What did I do?
yeah. I don't know. Do you want me to help you? I don't know what.
No.
Oh, the breakout. Oh, here they come back.
What did I do?
Oh, they're coming back.
You get what you pay for. That's all I can say. I don't know. I did something. I'm sure it was my fault.
Nobody's. We found ourselves back through the yellow brick road.
There's
You're getting to know me. I'm sorry.
a few more who should be back, I think. I'm not sure we're up to.
You should,
Hi.
yeah, you should come back.
Hi.
Yeah, come back.
How do we do that?
We don't know how we got here. We were just put back here.
Um, not
Take us
sure.
back.
But we were put into the naughty corner.
You can do close all rooms or something. There's
I
a switch
did.
that says close all rooms.
Now I can't get back out either. Admit
Yeah.
main session. There goes Kurtika.
Yeah, somehow Andrea dropped off. Should we, you want us to leave Anne and then just join the group again? Join the meeting again? Would that help?
But I'm stuck in the,
Oh yeah, and you're the host, so you can't leave.
um, leave room. In the bottom of the corner, you should see a thing that says leave room.
Oh yeah, I got it now, yeah. Okay.
I don't have it. Where is it?
Bottom of,
Okay, bottom right.
bottom right-hand corner in blue, it says leave room.
Yes, thank you.
Ed,
Yeah, so.
I'm not sure how I got removed from the meeting, but
I
I
know.
can't get back in.
Yeah, in the lower right-hand corner, you should see a blue box that says leave room.
I'm using an iPad and I don't see such a box.
Okay, I don't know then. Can you just sign out of it altogether and zoom and re-enter the
Sure,
Zoom, and
sure.
I'll assign you. I'll let you in.
Sure.
Okay.
we engage with other kinds of differences in culture, then we can become more ethno-relative or more egalitarian. And the insight from our group was that you can you can get a lot of clarity when you're more ethno-relative or more egalitarian, and respect grows and connection grows from there. So the self-awareness then can grow, and the other awareness can grow once you have made that switch from that ethnocentric to ethno-relative or egalitarian.
Yeah, and I sort of think of relativity in another way as well. So thanks for that, Nick. I mean, I'll give you a concrete example. I was working with a group which was led by a Greek, and all the rest in the group were Finns. And when we did the 360, he came out as quite linear, and the Finns saw him as multi-active. And but of course, even if he were quite linear in the context of him thinking about, for example, he mentioned his family at home. Well, I'm quite linear compared to them. For this group of Finns, relatively speaking, he was still very multi-active. So, that relativity is extremely important, I'd say. Okay, let's move on. Hannah, and then we'll go to Renata after Hannah. So you've got your hand up, and if you could put your mic on.
Thank you. I was part of the group that, we were all exiled. We took a minute getting back, so I apologize if I repeat myself to something that somebody already said, but we talked about some of the gaps being gender, age, experience, ageism, having the difference between self-awareness and feedback, which you just mentioned about the 360 review, listening skills and bonding skills, understanding that there are not only the listening skills that we work at, but how do we bond with others? What are the questions that we ask? How do we show it non-verbally, showing that we're bonding with people? And how do you know when someone is listening? How do you know when you're bonding with somebody? Even the neurodivergent gaps, it may look different when someone is listening who may be neurodivergent, and the empathy that we need when speaking with different folks that are different than us, and being willing to listen and learn about a process that is different than ours. So just a huge thanks to the people in my group, Alexander, Fatima, and Jan, for a really great conversation.
Great, thanks very much, Hannah, for that. Let's move on to Renata then, who has her hand up.
So I was in a group with Lana and Megan, and Lana had a wonderful example from her own experience that gave us a good starting point, and to look at it from a more psychological point of view, actually, not so much the cultural point of view that you mentioned. And it reminded me a bit of, I don't know if you're familiar, or some people here are familiar with the Johari window, the perspective where you have a public area, meaning we all know what it means. Everybody knows what everybody thinks, where we're all coming from, and these kind of misunderstandings would never happen. Or the situation Lana was in with her very toxic boss, let's put it that way, it would have never happened, because everybody would have known where it comes from, what's good for everyone, and what we should do to move on. But unfortunately, we have these areas of a blind spot or a hidden area, meaning sometimes we know about it, but nobody else does, or everybody else knows about it, but we don't know about it, or the really mysterious area, the unknown area where nobody really knows where a certain type of behavior comes from. And that's the cultural area that was previously mentioned. We don't even know what certain body language means, or how we act and react. But this whole psychological idea of we have an open area, a hidden area, a blind spot, and all this. And we can only get out of this by giving good constructive feedback, by trusting each other, having psychological safety. But if we don't, we're doomed.
Great, thanks very much. And I'm glad that you mentioned psychological safety. And I'm aware that we've only got about 5 minutes, and I need to leave some space for the announcements at the end. But I do just one comment and one further question. When you mentioned psychological safety, I think one of the questions in the chat was about power and power dynamics, and how in the team do you challenge the boss. Well, I was working with a very interesting, the approachability of the leader, as Nick says. Yeah, I was, and I'd say it's very much down to the boss. I was working with an interesting group in the UK a few months ago, and I asked, we were talking about trust in teams, particularly in the time of COVID and delegation in teams. And I asked someone, how do you know, as the boss of the team, if the team trusts you? And she immediately said, if they're willing to criticize and challenge me, then I know that they trust me, which was a very good answer. So slightly counterintuitive at first, but I'm sure that it's true. So my last question, and I'm sorry that we don't have more time to debrief, but most of the value, I think, is from the discussions in your teams, is this question that I raised previously about why do you think it is that very often the picture that people in the team have of the boss is so divergent compared to very often other people in the team? Why is the boss seen so differently by different people? And is it good or bad?
It could be down simply to a larger data set because, as your research shows, they're more loquacious and talkative. And it might be that they have to be more things to more people, and there are different messages they have to send.
I
That's
would
one answer.
That they're sort of being situated. And what I've noticed is that, you know, if you've got a multi-active boss in their own opinion, then linear people in the team tend to see them as more linear than they see themselves because they're sort of adapting. So I actually see it as it can be quite a positive thing. They're not changing who they are, but they're just adapting to the circumstance. We can take one more person to talk, which is
yes,
Jan.
Michael.
Oh,
Is Jen?
Jan, yeah, Jan.
Oh, sorry. Sorry,
I can see you with your hand.
Go ahead. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
sorry.
You had your hand raised.
Okay, sorry. No, very quickly. I think it's what we had a bit in our discussion is there's this image you have of yourself. And so you want to be the best version of yourself in front of people who you're teaching or training or dealing with or leading. And I think the way people interpret their own best version of themselves is reflected on you. So that's why there's a gap, because they're looking at you. Maybe they value a great listener. Somebody else might value somebody who's very loquacious. So they're going to judge you by those things that they admire the most. I think that's one of the things that I've noticed over the years.
I'm sure that that is absolutely correct. And I like your intonation in the years.
Yes, the toll is beginning to show. I'm still here. Thank you.
Fine. So thank you, Jan. Syed?
Yes, thank you, Michael. So I think it's in two parts. The first part simply is self-awareness. I am not personally know who I really am. So I need to do a lot more work on myself to have more and more self-awareness through all kinds of tools and techniques available. Number one. Number two, when I was manager at ExxonMobil, I did not interact with individually with each and every person the same way. If person was new in the team, I did a lot more advising, a lot more hand-holding. The person who was in team longer, I just gave them little direction and you just run with it. So I interacted with each individual, what that individual needed. So that may not give my persona, my picture of who I am equally to each and every one.
Perfect. I agree, absolutely. And you know, what can you do about it? Well, be aware that you're perceived differently. Decide what you can do to change. One of the things I then do with them is do role play, and then come back to the same team if possible some months later and say, well, how's it been going? Have people changed for each person? Okay, I'd better finish because Anne needs to finish off. If you're interested in finding out more about this tool, the Culture Active thing, just let me know. You can contact me via LinkedIn or Culture Chat. Okay.
Thank you, Michael. Michael, this is wonderful. It's just a perfect example of how to share your expertise in an educational and supportive way. And it's just exactly what we hoped for. Thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks, July 13th and the 27th, for the ITech Check our website if you have information about that or the International Circle. And we'll see you next time. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.